Marcus Dean was the kind of man who didn't rattle easily. He couldn't afford to. Every weekday, he stood in front of 37th graders at Oak Ridge Middle School in Sanford, Florida, trying to make life science seem more exciting than the phones they weren't supposed to have out. It was thankless work most days. Cellophane wrappers crinkling during lectures, blank stares during tests, but it meant something to him. Still, by the time he pulled into his driveway each evening, he was running on fumes. His home was his reset button. A modest, one-story red brick house with a narrow driveway and a front lawn he trimmed himself every Sunday. There wasn't much flash to it, but it was clean, calm, and most importantly, it was his. The kind of place where he could kick off his shoes, grade a stack of quizzes, and catch the last quarter of the game with no interruptions. At least that was the idea. Then Evelyn Monroe moved in next door. The first time Marcus saw her cherry red Infiniti parked in his driveway, he figured it was a one-time thing. Maybe she was getting a delivery and needed space to maneuver, or maybe her own driveway was blocked. No big deal. He let it slide. But then it happened again, and again. At first, Evelyn offered paper-thin explanations. She was just dropping something off. She didn't want to block her sprinkler line. She needed to run in for a second. Each time she delivered it with the same tight-lipped smile and a flutter of those overly polished fingers, like it was all very reasonable, and any frustration on Marcus's end was a personal failing. He didn't like it, but he wasn't the kind of man to create unnecessary conflict, so he gave her space. Until one Wednesday, already dragging from a week of back-to-back parent-teacher meetings, Marcus pulled onto his street and saw that same Infiniti sitting dead center in his driveway. No note, no sign of Evelyn, just her car, bold as ever. He parked on the curb, climbed out slowly, and walked next door, knocking firmly on her door. A few moments passed before Evelyn opened it, wearing silk joggers and a bored expression like she'd been expecting this exact conversation and didn't plan to take it seriously. Marcus nodded toward his driveway. "Your car's blocking my space again." She blinked like she needed a moment to recall which car he meant. "Oh, there was a contractor. He needed room to back out. I figured you'd be okay parking on the street this once." Her tone was all airy dismissal, like she was handing him a gift. "I'm not," Marcus said, keeping his voice even. "I need you to stop parking in my driveway." Evelyn let out a long, performative sigh. "Marcus, we're neighbors. It's not like I'm parking on a stranger's lawn. What's the harm?" "You're parking on my property. That's the harm." She rolled her eyes with the kind of exaggerated flair you usually only saw in teen dramas. "You're really this upset over a few minutes of parking?" "It's not a few minutes," Marcus replied, folding his arms. "It keeps happening, and I'm asking you respectfully to stop." For a second, her mask slipped, and something colder flickered across her face. But then she forced a smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. "Fine, I'll move it." She did. That time. But the pattern didn't stop. Over the next 2 weeks, it became routine. Marcus would come home from work, ready to drop onto the couch with a sandwich and a cold drink, only to find her Infiniti in the exact same spot. Sometimes parked at a slant, other times nosed halfway into his flower bed. If he left a note, it vanished. If he knocked, she wasn't home. He tried being civil, he tried being patient. But Evelyn Monroe had mistaken his silence for submission, and Marcus was about to show her exactly how wrong she was. If this part hit different for you, show it some love. Like, comment your thoughts, maybe even share it with a friend. It was a Thursday when Marcus pulled into his street and saw something that nearly made him laugh. Except he was too tired for that. Not only was Evelyn's cherry red Infiniti parked across his driveway again, but beside it sat a glossy black Mercedes coupe, angled like it belonged in a dealership showroom, not on private property. Marcus didn't even bother knocking. He parked halfway down the block, took a photo on his phone, both cars clearly filling his driveway, and then walked to her front door. His steps were heavy, slow. He hadn't eaten since noon. His lesson plan for Friday still needed printing, but this couldn't wait. He pounded harder than usual, and after a minute, Evelyn appeared. No rush, no apology, just a glass of wine in one hand, barefoot in designer slippers, her shoulder leaning casually against the doorframe. "Marcus," she said, dragging out his name like a sigh. "Is there a problem?" He didn't even flinch, just pointed back toward the cars. Who's Mercedes? She glanced past him without concern. My friend Celeste. We're doing a little wine tasting thing. He blinked. In my driveway? She shrugged, sipping. You weren't home. Figured it wouldn't be a big deal. He didn't yell. He didn't throw his hands in the air, but his voice tightened. It is a big deal, Evelyn. This isn't some community lot. It's my property. She chuckled. If it bothers you that much, you should have said something earlier. I am saying something now, Marcus said, jaw set. Move the cars. Fine, fine, she muttered, disappearing back inside like she was granting a royal favor. He waited. 10 minutes passed, then 15. No sign of movement. No engines starting. No tires rolling. That's when Marcus sat down on his couch, opened his laptop, and searched tow service near me. He wasn't someone who liked stirring the pot. But there comes a point when quiet doesn't fix things. It only makes room for people like Evelyn to take more. The next morning, he called the HOA before leaving for work. Not because he thought they'd help, but because part of him still wanted to believe in doing things by the book. He explained the situation calmly to the woman on the line, her voice flat and indifferent. Unless there's physical damage to your property, she said, we really don't get involved in neighbor issues. She's using my driveway like her personal valet stand. Have you tried speaking with her directly? He smiled grimly. That's all I've been doing. We can send a courtesy email. Great, he said, and hung up. That afternoon, before leaving work, he wrote one final note in block letters. Do not park here again. This is your last warning. He tucked it under her windshield. Then he drove to school, hoping maybe that would be enough. But when he returned home that evening, the note was gone, and the Infiniti was back. Parked crooked, blocking his path. Again. That was it. He didn't knock, didn't text, didn't call. Marcus went inside, dropped his work bag on the floor, grabbed his phone, and called the tow company. This is Marcus Dean. I need a vehicle removed from my private driveway. The dispatcher asked a few questions, then said, We'll be there in 20. Marcus stood outside and waited, arms crossed on his porch. When the tow truck rumbled around the corner, he didn't wave, just pointed. The driver hopped down, surveyed the scene. She live here? Nope. That's her house next door. This is mine. Proof of ownership? Marcus handed him a copy of his deed, printed and ready. The driver nodded. Let's get her out of here. Watching her luxury SUV get hoisted up and strapped in was almost meditative. The hiss of hydraulics, the click of chains, the slow rise of justice. Within minutes, the truck was gone, taillights fading toward the impound lot. Marcus sat back down on his porch. He didn't feel triumphant, just relieved. He didn't have to wait long for her reaction. Around 8:30 that night, there was a pounding on the front door. Sharp, loud, furious. Marcus stood slowly, stretched, and opened it with zero urgency. There she stood, Evelyn Monroe, flip-flops, designer pajamas, mascara slightly smudged, phone clutched in one hand like it might help her win whatever battle she thought she was fighting. Where is my car? She snapped. Marcus tilted his head. You mean the one illegally parked in my driveway? Her voice raised. Don't play dumb with me. You towed it. He met her stare. Yep. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. You're gonna regret this. I'm on the HOA board, Marcus. I know people. He gave her a slow blink. Your car's at Sanford Towing on 1792. You can pick it up in the morning. Then he shut the door. Behind it, he could hear her fuming, ranting to no one, shouting empty threats to the porch light. She even called the police. But when they showed up, all Marcus did was hand over his deed. The officer barely stayed 5 minutes. Ma'am, he's within his rights. You'll need to pay the release fee. Marcus never forgot the look on her face, eyes wide, mouth twitching, hands clenched around that phone like it owed her something. And that was just the beginning. Marcus thought the tow truck would be the end of it. A line in the sand, a clear message. But he underestimated one thing. Evelyn Monroe didn't lose quietly. She wanted revenge. At first it was subtle. A note taped to his front door, written in bold red ink like she was trying to look official. It read, This is a community. We should all be more respectful of our neighbors. No name, no signature. Just that passive-aggressive jab wrapped in a fake sense of unity. He crumpled it and tossed it in the trash without a second thought. But that was just her opening move. 3 days later, Marcus found a letter from the HOA in his mailbox, a formal complaint. Apparently, his front porch ferns were in violation of community aesthetics. He laughed out loud. Those same potted ferns had been there for 2 years. Not a single issue until now. But suddenly they were a problem? Clearly, Evelyn had gone from passive-aggressive to paperwork. Then came the garbage bin violation. Another letter, this time claiming he left his trash cans out too long after pickup. He looked at the timestamp on his doorbell cam. He'd brought them in 2 hours after the truck passed. But still, another complaint. And then, his mailbox paint was fading. It was like she had made it her full-time job to find things to report. He half expected her to start measuring the blades of his lawn with a ruler. But Marcus didn't snap. He didn't rant or retaliate. He just documented everything, screenshotted every complaint, took photos, even saved the audio from his smart doorbell whenever she walked by and muttered under her breath. He knew what she was doing, and he was patient. Then came the night Evelyn took things to another level. It was just after sunset. Marcus was out front, watering his lawn, earbuds in, zoning out to some Miles Davis. A soft breeze cut the humidity, and for a moment, things felt still, peaceful, until the flashing lights showed up. A white security SUV pulled to the curb like something out of a crime show. A tall man stepped out, mid-50s, radio clipped to his belt, adjusting it like this was something serious. "You live here, sir?" he asked. Marcus blinked, pulling out an earbud. "Yeah. We received a call about some suspicious activity." He didn't have to ask. He already knew who made the call. He turned his head, and there she was. Evelyn, standing on her porch, arms folded like she was watching a live show. "Suspicious?" Marcus asked. The officer cleared his throat. "Something about unusual behavior, lingering near property lines, possibly trespassing." "I'm watering my grass." The officer shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I have to respond to every call, but clearly there's—" "Save it," Marcus said. "Tell her to find a new hobby." The officer nodded, got back in his SUV, and drove off without even looking at Evelyn. But she still stood there, smiling. That smug little curl of her lips said one thing: "I'm still in control." Marcus stared at her across the lawn. She wanted him to explode, to raise his voice, to give her something she could twist and use against him. That's how people like her worked. Manufacture drama, then act like the victim. But instead, he walked right up to her porch. She blinked, feigning confusion. "Oh, Marcus, is everything all right?" He didn't take the bait. "I saw security out here. Hope nothing serious happened." She tilted her head, playing the part. "We all have a duty to protect our neighborhood. You just never know these days." He folded his arms. "You know exactly why they came." She gasped. "Now don't be rude. I was just following protocol." He studied her, quiet for a long beat. She was waiting for him to lose it, to crack. Instead, he smiled. Not a fake smile, a calm, sharp one. "I'm done playing games, Evelyn. I gave you more chances than you ever deserved. But you keep pushing, so let's see what happens when I push back." For the first time, her face twitched, a flicker of uncertainty. And she should have been nervous, because the next time she crossed the line, Marcus wouldn't just respond. He'd make it count. 1 week later, Marcus came back from the gym, towel over his shoulder, protein shake in hand, feeling good for the first time in days. He'd been keeping to himself, ignoring Evelyn's petty games, focusing on his students, his peace. But as he turned the corner onto his street, his smile vanished. There it was again, her cherry-red infinity, not just in his driveway, but blocking his garage. He parked across the street and sat behind the wheel for a long minute, just staring at it. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a message, and Marcus was done listening. He stepped out, calm, controlled, walked to the back of his car, pulled out 2 folding chairs, and set one down on his porch like he was settling in for a front-row show. Then he made the call. "Yeah, it's Marcus Dean again," he said into his phone. Tone flat. Same address, same car. The dispatcher laughed under her breath. You got it. We'll be there in 15. Marcus leaned back, sipping his shake. This time he wasn't pacing or fuming. He wasn't even mad. He was watching the inevitable unfold. The tow truck arrived fast, engine growling, lights off to avoid drawing attention. The driver stepped down and grinned when he saw Marcus waiting on the porch. Round two. Guess some people never learn, Marcus replied. The driver popped his gloves on, gave the car a once-over. She's not home? She'll be out in a second, Marcus said, folding his arms. They always come running when the hook goes under the wheels. The driver chuckled and got to work. The truck backed into position. The cable hitched. The rear wheels lifted. And right on cue, the front door next door slammed open. Evelyn came stomping out in designer slides and a satin robe, eyes wide, mouth already moving before she reached the sidewalk. What are you doing? Stop! You can't do that! Marcus didn't move from his chair, just sipped his drink, one leg crossed over the other. The tow truck driver didn't even glance at her. Ma'am, please step back. You have no right, she shouted, pointing at Marcus. You called them again? He tilted his head, slow and steady. You parked in my driveway, again. There's no street parking. I had guests. Not my problem. You're being petty, she shouted, arms flailing. I told you I would have moved it. Marcus stood up now, brushing invisible dust off his shirt. You've told me that before, a lot of times, but somehow, your car keeps showing up. She stepped closer, voice dropping into something sharper. You don't know who you're messing with. I have friends on the HOA. I can make this hard for you. Marcus actually laughed, a full, real laugh, the kind that cuts tension like a knife. Oh, Evelyn, you keep acting like this is still your playground. He pointed behind her. But your car? It's already gone. She spun around, and sure enough, the Infiniti was already halfway down the block, rolling toward the impound lot. She screamed, loud, a noise that bounced off the houses and drew curtains back all up and down the street. You're going to regret this, she shrieked, finger trembling as she pointed at him. Marcus just looked at her, expression cool, voice calm. Number you are. And right then, his family started arriving. His brother pulled up with a tray of ribs. His sister and niece spilled out of a silver SUV. Everyone greeted him with hugs, waves, and laughter. Evelyn stood there, jaw tight, completely ignored. And for the first time, it hit her. She wasn't the main character anymore. She was the spectacle. The nosy neighbor across the street snapped a photo. Someone else took video from their front yard. Within hours, clips were floating through neighborhood group chats and DMs. Marcus didn't post a thing. He didn't have to. She did it all to herself. And he wasn't done. Not yet. By Monday morning, Marcus had become the villain. Or at least, that's what Evelyn wanted people to believe. It started with an email, a carefully worded message from the HOA board sent to every resident on the block. The subject line was harmless enough, a note on neighborly conduct, but the body of the email dripped with implication. Recent escalations between residents have drawn unnecessary attention, it read. We encourage all homeowners to resolve disputes with compassion and mutual respect. No names, no specifics, but everyone knew exactly who it was about. 2 days later, laminated flyers began showing up, taped to mailboxes, slipped under doors. One was plastered across Marcus's own front gate. Is this the kind of community we want? Towing neighbors instead of talking? We can do better. He pulled it down and stared at it for a long second. Laminated. She was really going all in. But what Evelyn didn't realize, what she couldn't realize, was that people weren't buying it. Not this time. Neighbors who had stayed quiet for years were suddenly texting Marcus. Hey, saw the flyer. Ridiculous. Everyone knows she's been impossible since day one. She tried to fine me last spring for hanging wind chimes. If she parks in your driveway again, I'll help pay for the tow. One message stood out. It was from Mr. Goldman, 3 houses down, a retired vet who rarely spoke. She called security on my grandson once, said he looked suspicious for wearing a hoodie. You did the right thing, Marcus. That's when Marcus realized something important. He hadn't just drawn a line in his own driveway. He'd cracked the entire illusion Evelyn had built around herself. For years, she'd ruled the neighborhood like a queen behind tinted windows and HOA bylaws. People let her get away with it because they didn't want the hassle, the fines, the confrontation. But now they saw her unraveling, and no one was stepping in to stop it. That week, the HOA held its regular community meeting. Normally, Marcus wouldn't have gone, but this time, he took a front row seat. He walked in, head high, arms crossed, and sat directly across from Evelyn. She didn't even glance at him. The meeting began with the usual checklist: budget updates, landscaping changes, someone asking about pool access codes. Then the room shifted. A board member, a gray-haired woman with a clipboard, cleared her throat. We've received multiple reports regarding inappropriate behavior by a member of the board. We're addressing those tonight. Evelyn sat up straight, lips already parted like she was ready to speak. But the woman didn't stop. The complaints are specific: misuse of community security resources, unauthorized communications, targeted retaliation, and excessive fines issued without proper cause. Gasps echoed from the back row. Evelyn blinked. I'm sorry, are you implying this is about me? No one answered, because no one needed to. We've reviewed the logs, the woman continued. Security was dispatched 3 times to Marcus Dean's property with no justification. The fines issued for porch plants and mailbox paint were based on personal vendettas, not HOA standards. Evelyn's face darkened. Her voice jumped an octave. You're taking his side? Another board member spoke now, a soft-spoken man in his 60s. We're taking the side of the community. Evelyn looked around the room, searching for allies. There were none. Even the people she once bullied into silence were now whispering behind cupped hands. The meeting ended with a motion, a vote. Evelyn Monroe was removed from the HOA board. Just like that. The title she'd clung to like armor? Gone. Her voice in the community? Muted. Her control? Vanished. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just stood, nodded once, and walked out the front doors as the room buzzed behind him. He didn't need a parade. He didn't want a spotlight. But he had the one thing he'd wanted since this whole mess began. Peace. Marcus figured that after losing her spot on the board, Evelyn would finally back off. Most people would take the hint, but not her. 2 days after the HOA meeting, Marcus pulled into his driveway and noticed something strange. His trash cans were gone. Not tipped over, not misplaced. Gone. He scanned the curb. Nothing. Walked a few steps toward the street. Still nothing. Then he spotted them, behind Evelyn's house, stacked neatly by her fence like she'd been collecting them, like they were trophies. He laughed. Not loud, not bitter. Just one quiet, exhausted exhale of disbelief. Stealing trash cans. That was where she was now. He pulled out his phone and took clear photos from multiple angles. The serial numbers matched. There was no question. They were his. Then he walked straight to her door. No hesitation, no fury, just calm, steady resolve. He knocked once. Nothing. Knocked again, louder this time. Finally, the door cracked open. Evelyn stood there in a cardigan, her hair pulled back. No wine glass, no smug smile. She looked smaller somehow. Not defeated, but worn down. Like even she knew this game was almost over. Marcus held up his phone. You want to explain why my trash cans are in your yard? She crossed her arms. I don't know what you're talking about. He chuckled. Come on, Evelyn. I've got pictures. Let's not do this dance. She looked past him toward the street, said nothing. You've lost, he said, voice low. You can't find me. You can't send security. You're not on the board. And now you're out here hiding my garbage like a cartoon villain. Her jaw tensed. You've spent months trying to make my life miserable, Marcus continued. But take a look around. He gestured toward her house. No guests, no cars, no flyers on doors, no movement. Seems like you're the one who's miserable now. Her lips parted, but no words came. For a moment, they stood there, the silence louder than any argument. Then she shut the door. And that, Marcus thought, was the smartest thing she'd done all year. But he wasn't done. The next morning, he filed a formal complaint to the HOA. This time, it was airtight. Not just his word against hers, but photo evidence, timestamps, security footage, and reports from other neighbors. The file was thick. Retaliation, false security calls, unauthorized HOA communications, theft. By the end of the week, the board had no choice. They issued an official sanction. Evelyn Monroe was permanently barred from holding any HOA position again. The neighborhood got the notice in a plain white envelope. No dramatic email, no announcement. But the message was clear. Her power? Gone. Her platform? Gone. Her influence? Done. And the best part? She never parked in Marcus's driveway again. No more condescending waves. No more notes. No more fake violations about porch ferns or mailbox paint. She didn't even look at him. For the first time in months, Marcus could come home, pull into his own driveway, and not feel like he was walking into a war zone. Just peace. Simple, quiet peace. But the story didn't end there. Because Evelyn's collapse had turned into neighborhood folklore. People started sharing stories, things they'd never said out loud before. She fined me $75 for having a bike on my porch. She called security on my nephew because he was playing with sidewalk chalk. She threatened to sue me over a wind spinner. And every time someone shared a story, Marcus realized something new. She had been a problem long before she parked in his driveway. He just happened to be the first one who fought back. And when he did, the rest of the block followed. It started with a sign, white background, bold black letters, stuck in Evelyn's front yard. For sale, no fanfare, no open house balloons. Just a quiet signal that the storm was finally over. Marcus spotted it on a Sunday morning as he stepped outside to grab the paper. The air was cool, the lawn was still damp, and that sign stood like a gravestone marking the end of a war. He didn't smile, he didn't gloat, he just watched. Some said Evelyn was leaving because she was embarrassed. Others whispered it was pressure from the HOA or the whispers that never stopped. The truth? Marcus didn't care why she was going, only that she was. When the moving truck showed up a few weeks later, neighbors gathered, quietly, respectfully, like they were watching a piece of history roll away. Evelyn stayed out of sight. No goodbyes, no apologies, just her silhouette behind drawn curtains as the last box disappeared into the back of a truck. Then she was gone, just like that. Marcus stood on his porch and let it sink in. The silence, the space, the peace. No cars blocking his driveway, no passive-aggressive notes, no threats disguised as HOA memos. Just birdsong, the distant hum of sprinklers, and a neighborhood that had learned how to breathe again. But the best part? She didn't take the story with her. If anything, it grew. Evelyn Monroe became a kind of legend, a cautionary tale. Her name got whispered at barbecues and block parties, her laminated flyers passed around like relics. "That's the house where the HOA queen used to live," someone would say. "You mean the woman who stole trash cans?" "Yup, towed twice, lost her seat, never parked wrong again." And Marcus, he didn't need credit. He didn't need a trophy or a headline. All he needed was what he'd been chasing from the beginning, the right to come home and exhale. Sometimes he'd catch himself smiling as he pulled into his driveway. Not because he'd won, but because he knew now that some fights are worth it. Because some people think they can get away with anything. They think politeness means weakness, that silence means surrender. But every bully eventually meets someone who pushes back. And when they do, the whole world watches them fall.